Hey, this is Josh with Cultural Catholic coming at you with another round of international stories. And today I'm going to talk about population in Eastern Europe, very disturbing trend in Brazil, and some stuff happening over with the Kurds, which that's going to be fun. Anyways, so Quartz reported uh, today that Eastern Europe is projected to shrink dramatically over the next few decades. What's worst is most countries are refusing to consider one solution to slow the incoming demographic disaster. So the UN, and there'll be links to these articles in the article that I'll link to in the description below. The UN did some analysis, and there are several countries that are going to have massive population drops, and the 10 of the biggest ones will be in Europe, almost exclusively in Eastern Europe, with one or two in Northern or Central Europe. Um, and these will be dramatic demographic shifts. Um, it is expected that Bulgaria, for instance, will go from 7.08 million now to 5.42 million in 2050, which is a percentage change of about 23%, about 23 percentage points. And all of these are between 23 and 15 percentage points. And these 10 in these are the 10 with the fastest shrinking populations. And the 10 are Bulgaria, Latvia, Moldova, Ukraine, Croatia, Lithuania, Romania, Serbia, Poland, and Hungary. And the two factors that are causing this massive population decline is a low birth rate and massive migration out of these countries. Now you'll notice all of these countries are former Soviet states. Um, Yes, the Soviet bloc has been gone for 20 some odd years, 30 actually, and a lot of these countries are facing massive population shrinkage because there's not a lot of opportunity in these countries, economically speaking. Additionally, um, uh, while some, like Poland, were actually thriving democracies for a while. A lot of these are starting to turn towards more right wing governments. Most of them are. Lithuania, I think, and Ukraine are actually starting to democratize a little bit more, but there's still some work that needs to be done. Um, and when the government is kind of corrupt, sometimes people decide that can be a factor in people leaving a country. And corruption tends to also couple with low economic opportunity. Um, and industrialized nations have lower birth rates than developing countries. It's just how it works. And increasing economic opportunity, trying to democratize that helps. But another thing that would help would be taking in refugees or migrants or immigration as a whole. And a lot of these countries are resisting taking in immigrants, especially in the context of the crisis that happened that was in the news all the time the last couple years ago, which was the refugee and migrant crisis. These countries were noted for being virulently anti migrant and anti refugee. Hungary, Bulgaria, all of these countries did not want to take in any refugees, and on top of that, with the resettlement that the EU tried to do, uh, the Czech Republic and Slovakia both took in 12 to 16 migrants. Poland and Hungary took in none. These countries are refusing to maintain their population through bringing in immigrants, which happens when right wing governments take over. And with the rest of Europe, the only reason population growth occurred was because they took in refugees and migrants. So if these countries don't change quickly, they're going to have a significant population decrease. Now on to Brazil. The Atlantic reports today that there's a rise in evangelical influence in Brazilian politics. There's this politician who was in the military during the military dictatorship. His name is, I'm going to mispronounce this massively, Jair Messias Bolsonaro. He is a Brazilian, like I said, a Brazilian politician. He used to be in the military, and he really liked the military dictatorship. Then again, he was also in the military at the time, so that kind of helped him. Um, he seems to show a disdain for uh, democracy. He's also very much law and order and very ultra conservative. He's kind of hard on crime. He said that he'd rather have a dead son than a gay son. So he's really putting himself out there as someone that the evangelical population in Brazil uh, would vote for. He comes from a Catholic family himself. However, Catholics by 2030 will be a minority in Brazil. Uh, and evangelicals at this point are 22% of the population, but they are quickly growing. Additionally, if he were to run for president today and the vote were to happen today, he would get about 20% of the vote. Um, and what's more is 1 in 3 Brazilians would today be okay with the military taking over. And the next best thing would be having someone who has a disdain for democracy, who was in the military when the military was in power, being president. And this is on the back of increased economic uncertainty in Brazil, increased crime, lots of politicians being put on trial, and he's presenting himself as like a law and order candidate, which evangelicals are latching onto, and he's also, much like Donald Trump, latching on to the economic anxiety of the middle class. Um, we have had similar candidates in other countries, but this will be the first one in the New World that will be very Donald Trump esque. Um, and he probably would have a good chance of winning in the next Brazilian election. So yeah, this is something to pay attention to be concerned about as economic uncertainty continues to go across the world and people are becoming angry with established political orders. They're going to go for the first person who gives them a solution, and sometimes that solution isn't going to be the best. The United States, we found that with Donald Trump. Brazil could find this with uh, Bolsonaro. Uh, who knows? All I know is that this is a disturbing trend that also looks vaguely familiar. And then finally, CBS News reports today that Kurds and Turks are fighting again. Only this time, instead of in Turkey, they're fighting in Syria. So the Syrian civil war is starting to wind down. Daesh has been largely dislodged from its power base. That happened last year in Raqqa, which was the de facto capital of Daesh, Daesh's state. And the Kurds were integral in doing so. They were supported by the military, the U.S. military, and they largely only allied with the Assad regime to fight Daesh. And Turkey is claiming that the Kurdish Workers' Party, the PKK, is supporting them, and it is considered a terrorist organization even by the United States. However, the PKK, when it does do terrorist-style attacks, it tries to minimize civilian and collateral damage, and tends to tries to target more police and military targets. So take that as you will. Um, Additionally, the U.S. government is building bases in Kurdish territory, and is planning to establish some sort of a border force there. The size and scope at this point is unknown, although it was walked back. In all fairness, um, and the Turks and Kurds have hated each other, and Turkey cannot stand an independent or powerful Kurdish force on its borders because then it would show the sizable Kurdish population in Turkey that an independent Kurdish state could be possible, and Turkey wants to hold on to that territory that it has in Turkish Kurdistan. Um, uh, yeah, so with the Syrian civil war starting to wind down, we could see two American allies starting to fight each other, and that would not be good or ideal. Um, yeah, so that is today's international news. Um, yeah, I will see you tomorrow with a bunch of new review videos and Friday with a domestic news video. So this is Joshua with Cultural Catholic signing off.